Captain Elias Rourke adjusted the straps of his armor and looked over the battlefield from the ridge. The planet Viridian was scarred with craters and fire, its sky thick with smoke that reflected the dying light of two suns. He had never seen war like this before. The alien coalition had called for humans to assist in their fight against the warlord Kyle-Rath, a tyrant who had enslaved entire star systems. Elias, a human soldier from Earth, had come knowing little of their ways, yet he had proven himself through skill, strategy, and courage. The alien forces below were a mix of shapes and sizes: tall beings with translucent skin, armored creatures that walked on 6 legs and others that hovered on air currents. Each group had its own fighting style, and Elias had spent weeks learning their strengths and weaknesses. Now the final push was at hand. "Rourke, move your units left. Kyle-Rath's flank is exposed," shouted Lieutenant Vera, a lithe alien with eyes like molten silver. She was young but sharp, and she trusted Elias more than many of her own commanders. Elias nodded and signaled his team. Small squads of human soldiers advanced, their movements precise and silent. Their armor shimmered with adaptive camouflage, blending into the rocky terrain. The battle erupted with thunderous explosions. Kyle-Rath's forces fired plasma cannons and energy bolts, their machines crushing everything in their path. Yet the humans moved like ghosts, avoiding traps and using terrain to their advantage. Elias spotted a cannon turret about to annihilate an alien squad and sprinted forward, dodging shrapnel and falling debris. With a well-aimed shot from his rifle, he disabled the weapon. "Impressive," Vera murmured over the comms, though she sounded distracted. Elias ignored her and pressed on, coordinating with alien squads. They moved like a single organism, striking where Kyle-Rath was weakest. Hours passed. The ground was littered with debris, smoke, and the groans of the wounded. Yet the coalition pressed forward, and the warlord's forces began to falter. Finally, Kyle-Rath appeared, a massive creature, taller than any soldier, with armor that seemed fused to his body. He bellowed a command and his troops regrouped for a counterattack. Elias realized the humans alone could not stop him. They needed the alien coalition to act. He raised his hand and signaled for a coordinated strike. "Now," he shouted. The aliens surged, their combined forces breaking Kyle-Rath's line. Elias engaged directly with Kyle-Rath, dodging swinging energy blades and firing precise shots to keep the warlord off balance. The battle was brutal, but Kyle-Rath's own overconfidence became his weakness. A final, perfectly timed strike from Elias disabled the warlord's armor core, sending him crashing to the ground. The battlefield fell silent. Smoke drifted across the scorched earth, and for a moment victory seemed almost unreal. The coalition cheered, their cries echoing across the valley. Humans and aliens alike had fought together, their combined courage overcoming tyranny. Elias allowed himself a small smile, but it faded quickly when he heard Lysera's voice. Commander Lysera, the coalition's high-ranking officer, stepped forward, her posture rigid and commanding. Her many limbs moved with precision as she surveyed the aftermath. Then, without warning, she spoke, words sharp and cutting. "You call this a victory, human?" she said, her tone dripping with disdain. "Your strategy nearly doomed my forces. You were reckless. You endangered everyone. Did you even consider the consequences?" Elias froze, the words striking deeper than any blade. Every action he had taken, every risk he had calculated, and every life he had saved suddenly seemed insignificant under her gaze. He wanted to explain, to remind her of the countless soldiers he had saved, but the words caught in his throat. "Captain Rourke?" Vera's voice was softer, concerned, but Elias did not respond. Lysera continued, her voice growing louder, echoing across the battlefield. "I do not understand why humans are even invited into our battles. You think yourselves heroes, but your arrogance nearly cost us everything. I will not forget this." The coalition forces, many of whom had cheered moments before, now shifted uneasily. Murmurs spread. Had Elias failed despite the obvious victory? For the first time, he felt the alien world's skepticism not as an observer but as its target. Elias slowly removed his helmet, letting the wind sweep across his face. The battle dust clung to his skin, the sweat burning his eyes. Then deliberately he began to unfasten his armor. The metal plates, once a symbol of his authority and skill, clinked softly as they fell to the ground. His comrades watched in stunned silence. The humans, who had always been admired for their courage and discipline, now saw their captain discard his armor, not out of defeat, but out of a quiet refusal to accept cruelty and arrogance. He stood bare-chested facing Lysra and said nothing. There was no anger, no protest, only calm resolve. His armor lay in pieces at his feet, a statement louder than any speech could be. He turned and walked away, each step deliberate and measured, leaving behind the battlefield, the coalition, and the hollow praise of those who failed to see true courage. Lysra's eyes widened in disbelief. How could a soldier, a human, walk away after a victory they had all fought so hard to achieve? She realized with an uncomfortable sting that she had underestimated the human spirit. Honor, courage, and integrity could not be measured by medals, ranks, or armor. They were proven by action and restraint. As Elias moved toward the horizon, the smoke clearing behind him, he felt the weight of solitude. Yet it was a different kind of weight, lighter, freer. For the first time in weeks, he felt that his choices belonged to him alone. He traveled through the rocky plains, careful of the hidden dangers that lingered after battle. Small predators native to Viridian eyed him curiously, but he avoided confrontation, relying on his instincts and agility. Nights were bitterly cold, and the twin moons cast eerie shadows across the terrain. Yet Elias pressed forward. The alien coalition might not understand him, but he understood himself. Along the way, he encountered an alien scout, a small, winged being with large, expressive eyes. The scout watched Elias from a distance, wary but intrigued. Elias did not approach immediately, but he noticed the creature's curiosity. Eventually, he stopped and held out a hand, not threatening but inviting. The scout hesitated, then landed softly on a nearby rock, observing him intently. "You don't need armor to be strong," Elias said quietly, almost to himself. The scout blinked, as if understanding more than words could convey. Days passed. Elias survived on minimal rations, hunting small game and finding water from hidden streams. He thought of the battle often, the cruelty of Lysra's words, and the strange sense of liberation he felt when he set down his armor. In that solitude, he reflected on humanity, its flaws, its resilience, and its unyielding sense of honor. Word of Elias's departure spread quickly. Some in the coalition were angry, seeing it as desertion. Others were curious, wondering why a human would reject glory. Rumors began to circulate, painting him as a man who valued integrity over recognition, courage over authority. One evening, as the twin suns set and painted the sky in fiery shades of red and gold, Elias found a small cave to rest. Inside, the walls glowed faintly with luminescent fungi. He settled against the cool stone, feeling the exhaustion of battle and travel. The scout perched nearby, its wings folding neatly. "Tomorrow," Elias said softly, "I will find a way to stop Kael'Rath's remaining forces. Not for glory, not for thanks, but because it is the right thing to do." The scout tilted its head, listening as if acknowledging his purpose. That night, as Elias drifted into a restless sleep, he did not dream of war or armor. He dreamt of stars, distant worlds, and the promise that one day, humans would be recognized not just for their strength, but for the values that guided them. And somewhere, beyond the ridge and across the battlefield, someone watched him, a shadow among the rocks, a figure that would follow him, challenge him, and ultimately test the courage and honor that had led him to lay down his armor. The story of Elias Rourke was far from over. He had walked away from glory, but he had not walked away from humanity's true strength. And that strength would shine, even in the darkest corners of the galaxy. The wind carried the faint scent of smoke and metal as Elias Rourke moved through the rocky plains of Viridian. Days had passed since he had abandoned the battlefield, leaving behind the coalition and Lysra's cruel words. Each step was measured, careful but determined. He traveled not for recognition, not for praise, but for purpose. Somewhere beyond the ridges lay remnants of Kael'Rath's forces, scattered but dangerous. Innocent lives still hung in the balance, and Elias could not ignore that. He had learned to survive in this harsh terrain, relying on his instincts and human ingenuity. Small fires kept predators at bay, and he fashioned simple traps to catch small game for food. Water was scarce, but hidden streams and underground springs offered enough to sustain him. Each night he slept lightly, aware of the dangers that lurked in the shadows. Yet the solitude gave him time to think, to reflect on the true meaning of courage, honor, and the human spirit. On the third day of his journey, Elias noticed movement ahead, a faint glimmer of wings catching the sunlight. He crouched and observed carefully. A small alien scout, the same one that had been watching him from a distance, hovered near a ridge. It had been following him quietly, curious but cautious. Elias smiled faintly. The creature seemed intelligent more than a mere observer. Perhaps it understood him better than the coalition he had left behind. "Come closer," Elias whispered, though he did not expect a response. The scout hesitated, then slowly descended, landing on a rock near him. Its large, expressive eyes fixed on Elias, and for a moment, they simply regarded each other in silence. Then, without warning, the scout chirped a soft musical sound. Elias understood. It was offering guidance. Following the scout, Elias moved deeper into the rocky valleys, where hidden caves and crevices offered protection from patrols of Kael'Rath's remaining forces. It was a dangerous region, riddled with old mines and energy traps left from previous battles. Yet Elias navigated it with ease, using his knowledge of human engineering and observation to avoid danger. Suddenly, a loud roar echoed through the canyon. Elias froze, listening. The sound was not of animals. It was Kael'Rath's remaining warriors hunting in packs, searching for any sign of resistance. He crouched behind a boulder, assessing the situation. There were 5 of them, heavily armed, moving with coordination and intent. Elias's heart did not race. His mind worked like a machine, calculating angles, distances, and opportunities. He had no armor, no heavy weapons, yet he was not defenseless. Using small rocks, he created distractions, sending echoes bouncing across the canyon. The warriors paused, confused, and Elias used the moment to position himself strategically. When one of them approached a narrow ridge, he triggered a makeshift trap, a pit concealed by loose rocks. The warrior fell with a shout, incapacitated but unharmed. The scout chirped in approval, flitting around him. Elias smiled. Even without armor, without medals or rank, humans had the ability to think, adapt, and survive. That was the difference. As the remaining warriors regrouped, Elias noticed movement from above. A larger armored figure, a lieutenant loyal to Kael'Rath, was descending the ridge, unaware of the traps below. Elias used the environment to his advantage, rolling a large boulder that blocked the path. The figure stumbled, barely regaining balance, and Elias seized the opportunity to disarm him. Within minutes, the remaining enemies either fled or were incapacitated. By nightfall, the valley was silent. Elias had survived, but he knew this was only the beginning. Kael'Rath's forces were not defeated, they were merely scattered, and he could not leave them to terrorize others. The scout perched on his shoulder as he made camp, watching him carefully. For the first time since leaving the battlefield, Elias felt a sense of companionship, however small. The next morning, Elias began the trek back toward the Coalition's Central Command, where Lysera and the other officers were stationed. He moved quietly, avoiding patrols, yet he felt a new confidence. The human way was different from alien hierarchy. It valued intelligence, resourcefulness, and integrity over titles and cruelty. He understood that he could not force others to see this, but his actions would speak louder than words. When he reached the outskirts of the Coalition's encampment, he noticed signs of trouble. Scouts reported attacks by rogue factions, former allies of Kael'Rath who sought to claim power for themselves. The Coalition's forces were stretched thin, unable to respond effectively. Without hesitation, Elias moved into action. He set up strategic defenses, using the terrain and simple engineering to fortify vulnerable positions. Small teams of aliens, initially skeptical of his presence, began to follow his instructions. The battle began at dawn. The rogue faction attacked with speed and ferocity, but Elias anticipated their moves, guiding the Coalition forces with precise instructions. He coordinated ambushes, traps, and defensive positions, allowing the aliens to maximize their strengths while minimizing risk. Every human soldier under his command moved like a shadow, striking where needed and disappearing before retaliation. Lysera arrived at the scene midway through the battle, arriving in her commanding armor, expecting chaos. Instead, she found order. The Coalition forces, under Elias's guidance, had repelled the attackers and secured the area. She watched silently as Elias directed the remaining human and alien soldiers, his calm demeanor and decisive actions preventing further losses. When the last of the rogue warriors fled, Lysera approached him, her expression unreadable. Elias, still without armor, met her gaze calmly. There was no pride, no arrogance, only focus and determination. "You," she began, then paused, searching for words. You have done what I could not. Even without your armor, you led us to victory. Elias nodded. Armor does not make a leader, Lysera. Courage, intelligence, and respect for life do. That is what I fought with. That is what humans bring to the galaxy. Lysera's posture shifted subtly. For the first time, she looked at him without judgment, seeing not just a soldier, but a symbol of honor and integrity. I underestimated you, she admitted quietly. The coalition recognized his contributions officially that day, but Elias did not reclaim his armor. He had learned that true strength was not in symbols or titles, but in actions. He remained unarmored, a human standing among aliens, respected not because of fear or rank, but because of unwavering honor. In the following weeks, Elias continued to aid the coalition, not as a tool of war, but as a teacher, a strategist, and a guardian. He trained human and alien soldiers alike, sharing knowledge, emphasizing teamwork, and fostering respect across species. Slowly, the perception of humans shifted. They were no longer newcomers or outsiders. They were a symbol of ingenuity, moral courage, and the ability to act rightly even when unrecognized. One evening, as the twin suns set over the horizon, Lysera approached him again. "Captain Rourke," she said, her voice softer now, "you have shown us what it means to fight with honor, not just as humans, but as beings who value life and courage. Thank you." Elias smiled faintly. "I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because it was right. That is all that matters." The alien scout perched nearby chirped in agreement, as if echoing his sentiment. Elias looked out at the horizon, thinking of the battles to come, the challenges of survival, and the promise of a galaxy that could learn from humanity's example. And though he had walked away from glory once, he had not walked away from purpose. He had proven that courage, wisdom, and honor were not measured by armor, medals, or recognition. They were measured by action, by integrity, and by the strength of the human spirit. As night fell, the stars shone brightly above Viridian. Elias stood silently, contemplating the vast universe before him. Somewhere out there, new challenges awaited, new worlds that needed protection, and new beings who could learn from humanity's example. He did not fear the unknown. He embraced it. The human who had once set down his armor and walked away had returned, not for praise, not for rank, but for something far greater. He had returned to remind the galaxy that humanity's greatest weapon was not technology or strength, but the courage to act rightly, even when unrecognized, and the wisdom to inspire others through honor. And in that quiet, unassuming way, Elias Rourke became a legend not for what he wore, but for who he was, and what humanity could represent in the vast infinite stars.